Hi guys, here's my tutorial for making these 1/12 scale miniature Polymer Clay cauliflowers. I'm going to show you in a few simple steps how you can create these realistic miniatures. So we're going to start with the head of the cauliflower, and I mix a combination of white and translucent polymer clay with the tiniest spot of yellow clay to make an off-white mix. So now you want to roll this out into a ball roughly the size of your fingernail and flatten this out to form a dome. I use these glass ramekins as a platform to work on. Once you have the rough shape, start by taking smaller pieces of clay and rolling these into small balls, which you can attach to the larger dome. These can be fairly random and varying sizes. Then I go in with my detail tool and start to texture each of these small pieces. So once you've finished, it should look something like this, and then I go over with my mini brush tool just to add a bit more texture. So now it's time to start on the leaves. I blend various shades of green with white and translucent clay to create two colours, one paler and one darker. The paler colour will form the veins of your leaves. As you can see, I'm building this up from the base to the top and just working on one side of the leaf. It's advisable to work larger than you need, as we're going to roll this down into a cane, so the detail will become more accentuated as it becomes smaller. Once you have half a leaf created, it should look something like this, and it's time to now cut in half. I use a really sharp razor blade so I don't distort it when I cut it. Flip these two pieces to mirror each other and then join them together. You can then start to gently form this together and roll this into a cane. Roll this down until you're at the correct size for the scale that you're working at. Once you're happy with the size, you can cut thin pieces from this, again using a very sharp razor blade. I use a small amount of corn flour or baby powder to flatten this out between my fingers and soften the edges of the leaf. You can then trim up the edges of your leaf to the correct shape. I then use a silicone mini leaf veiner to add the texture to the leaf. Remove this carefully from the veiner and then repeat this process to create 6 leaves per cauliflower. Now back to the head of the cauliflower, and before I bake it, I add a small amount of chalk pastel colour to the edges of this in pale green and yellow. You can then bake this for 20 minutes at 110 degrees C. The reason I bake this before is so when I handle it at the next stage, I don't distort all of the detail that I've created. Now this is baked, you want to add a ball of green polymer clay to the back of the head of the cauliflower. This doesn't need to be particularly pretty because it's going to be covered with your leaves. I add a small piece of clay to form a stalk, and then I start attaching my leaves in an alternate pattern. Start with 3 leaves equally spaced and then the other 3 leaves on top in the gaps remaining. I position the leaves in place with my knife, and then when I'm happy with the position, I go in with a detail tool and start to blend the base into the stalk. So your finished cauliflower should look something like this, and then the last detail is just to add a blush of colour to the base around the stalk, and again I use the chalk pastels in a green. Just a last tweak of any leaves before I bake them, and then they need 25 to 30 minutes on 110 degrees C. That's it, your cauliflowers are finished and they can be displayed however you like. Well, that's it folks. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if it's inspired you to get creative, then do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, Steve PUTNAM Design, for future updates.